I decided to surprise my wife at her office. By the time I left that lobby, I understood I didn't have a marriage anymore. I just didn't know it yet. If you're watching, drop the city you're tuning in from. You're going to want to see where this ends. My name is Gerald. I'm 56, and until one Thursday afternoon in October, I believed I knew my wife Lauren better than anyone alive. She'd been working late for weeks, CEO of Meridian Technologies, 12, 14-hour days. I'd been eating dinner alone more nights than I wanted to admit. So that morning, when she rushed out without her coffee, I decided to surprise her. I bought her favorite latte, made her a sandwich, and drove downtown. The lobby was marble and chrome, the kind of space that made my quiet accounting practice feel very small. A security guard named William sat at the desk. "I'm here to see Lauren Hutchkins. I'm her husband, Gerald." He looked at me like I'd said something impossible. Then he laughed. Not politely, but genuinely, like I'd told a joke. "Sir, I see Mrs. Hutchkins's husband every day. He just left. There he is now." I turned and watched a tall man in a charcoal suit stride through the lobby with the kind of ease that owns a room. William greeted him by name, Mr. Sterling, and told him Lauren was upstairs. Frank Sterling, her VP, the name she'd mentioned in passing for 3 years, always wrapped in business. William looked between us, confused. "Are you sure you're her husband? Because Mr. Sterling is married to her." Married to her, present tense. Everything in me wanted to explode right there in that lobby. Instead, 28 years of reading people in my accounting practice kicked in, and I did something colder. I played along. "You must be Frank. I'm a friend of the family, just dropping off some paperwork." He studied me for a second too long, then relaxed. I handed the coffee to a stranger and walked out into a life that no longer made sense. That night, Lauren came home at her usual time, kissed my cheek, asked about my day, exactly like always. I told her I'd brought her coffee. She said she never got it, probably in back-to-back meetings, and thanked me for thinking of her. Her hands never shook once. Either she was telling the truth, or she was the best liar I'd ever known. After 28 years, I genuinely didn't know which. I didn't sleep. My mind kept doing what it does best, the math. 3 years since Frank joined the company. How many late meetings? How many business dinners? How many times had I sat at home believing her while she was somewhere else, being someone else's wife? The next morning I stayed home from work for the first time in 15 years and started going through things, not frantically, but the way I audit a set of books, line by line. In her home office, I found a restaurant receipt from Chez Laurent, our anniversary place, dated 6 weeks earlier, for 2 people, no business charges, just an intimate dinner. That was the night she told me she'd had a client meeting with a woman from Portland. I called her about it, casually. She said the client deal didn't pan out. A half-second pause before she answered, a pause I recognized after decades of marriage. She was calculating. That afternoon I found the rest on her laptop, left open on the counter like it had been more often lately. A calendar invite from Frank Sterling, dinner, tonight, 7 p.m., Bellacourt, the restaurant where Frank had allegedly just closed a deal, but which happened to be the same place he'd apparently proposed to her, 17 years into knowing me. Scrolling further, recurring coffee with F every Tuesday. Dinner every other Thursday. A women's executive retreat that was actually a weekend with him. This wasn't an affair. This was a second, fully scheduled life. That evening she came home early, made up, wearing the dress she'd once called too fancy for every day. She suggested spontaneous dinner out, then, right on cue, remembered a Tokyo conference call and left in a change of clothes for the evening instead. I told her to take her time. I made a sandwich, and an hour later, drove past Bellacourt anyway. Her BMW sat next to a dark Mercedes in the lot. I didn't need to go inside to know. 3 days later, cleaning out a junk drawer, I found a brass key on a ring marked Harbor View Apartments, a complex we had no connection to. I drove there while Lauren was supposedly at a client presentation, watched Frank walk in carrying groceries like a man coming home, and 10 minutes later, let myself into apartment 214 with the key from my own kitchen drawer. It wasn't a hideout, it was a home. Her throw pillows on the couch, Photos of the two of them. A company party, his arm around her waist. A beach I'd never seen, her hand bare of her wedding ring. In the bedroom, her clothes hung beside his. Her contact solution and the expensive face cream she'd told me she couldn't afford sat on the bathroom counter. On the kitchen counter, I found a folder labeled Future Plans, Vacation Brochures, House Listings under Frank's name, a business plan naming Frank CEO of Meridian and Lauren President. And underneath it all, a consultation summary from Morrison and Associates, the same firm that had done our wills, outlining, in clinical language, the divorce strategy she'd been building against me: emotional abandonment, lifestyle incompatibility, my contentment with a quiet life reframed as evidence I'd failed her. She'd been building this case for at least 2 years while I brought her coffee and believed her "I love you" texts. I photographed everything. My accountant's instincts took over, even as the rest of me was breaking apart. Document it all now. Feel it later. That night I opened her email too, since I'd already crossed every line that mattered. Messages between her and Frank about timing the transition. Notes to her lawyer about preparing Gerald. An email to her sister. "Gerald's been so distant lately. I think he's going through some midlife crisis. I can't sacrifice my own happiness indefinitely. Frank thinks I should consider my options." She hadn't just betrayed me. She'd spent 2 years rewriting our marriage's history so that when she finally left, I'd look like the reason. I confronted her Saturday morning. She was in her yellow robe, coffee in hand, when I set the folder on the table between us. She didn't deny it. She didn't even look surprised. "How much do you know?" she asked, like we were discussing a project timeline. "Everything. The apartment. Frank. The lawyer. All of it." She nodded slowly, already recalculating. "I suppose this complicates things." "Complicates things? Lauren, we've been married 28 years. Let's not be dramatic. We both know this marriage has been over for years." Her voice had an edge I'd never heard directed at me before, the one she used on underperforming employees. "You've been passive, content. You never grew. Frank challenges me. He wants an empire. You wanted a quiet life, and for a long time I thought that was enough. It isn't." I asked when it started. 2 years ago, she said, the night of Frank's first big deal, the night she told me a client dinner ran late. "It had," she said, "just not the way I thought." I asked if the divorce planning justified 2 years of lying to me. "I wasn't lying," she said. "I was protecting you from a reality you weren't ready to face. So you decided to replace me instead of talking to me. Our marriage was over because you stopped growing." I asked if she loved him. "I do," she said, and meant it. "With Frank, I feel like I'm living. With you, I felt safe. For a long time, I thought safe was enough. It isn't." She and Frank wanted to be married by Christmas. She'd planned to file next month anyway. My discovery had just moved up her timeline. She even had the composure to tell me I'd probably be happier without the pressure of keeping up with someone like her. "I trusted you," I said. "I know. I'm sorry it had to end this way. Not sorry for what she'd done. Sorry it hadn't gone according to plan." I went upstairs and heard her on the phone with Frank before I'd even reached the bedroom, her voice suddenly bright, telling him the secret was out, that they could move faster now. The inconvenient husband had been dealt with. Monday morning I sat across from David Morrison, the same firm's lawyer, ironically, that Lauren had consulted about divorcing me. I laid out everything: the apartment, the emails, the legal strategy already built against me. But I'd also spent the weekend doing what I do best. Lauren made $200,000 a year. Our joint expenses had run $60,000 over her salary for 3 years running. I'd been quietly funding the gap from my own income without knowing where the extra was actually going. Now I knew. Her rent on Harbor View, the dinners, the gifts. She'd used our shared money to finance her second life while building a legal case to take half of everything that was left. "That's fraud," David said. "Using marital assets to fund an affair while planning to divorce you. A judge is going to care about that a great deal." There was more. Digging through Meridian's public filings, I found that Lauren had been quietly transferring major responsibilities to Frank, decisions that legally required board approval. positioning him to become CEO while she moved to president, all without ever disclosing their relationship or bringing the restructuring to a vote. She'd been rewriting the company the same way she'd been rewriting our marriage, unilaterally, and counting on nobody checking. That afternoon I called Richard Hayes, the chairman of Meridian's board. I stuck to facts, a possible unauthorized corporate reorganization, and let him ask the questions. By evening, the board had already opened a governance review. Lauren came home tight-jawed and furious. "You're trying to destroy my career." I shared factual information about an unauthorized reorganization, nothing more. "You knew exactly what you were doing." "Yes, the same way you knew exactly what you were doing when you spent 2 years planning my replacement." I told her I wasn't going to quietly disappear because it was convenient for her. For the first time since I'd found that key, she looked genuinely afraid. I filed for divorce the next morning, and for the first time in 28 years, I stopped being the man who made her life easier at the cost of his own dignity. The consequences came fast. Frank was terminated once the board confirmed the relationship. His judgment on decisions involving Lauren was compromised. Full stop. And his job had depended on that judgment being clean. He moved back to Denver for less money at a smaller firm. Lauren kept her job, barely, placed on probation, and made to report to a newly installed COO who reviewed her every major decision. The autonomy she'd built her identity around, gone. The divorce settlement reflected everything the evidence had uncovered. I kept the house I'd largely paid for. She kept her retirement accounts and half our savings, minus what she'd already spent maintaining her second life. It wasn't revenge. It was simply the truth, finally on paper. 6 months later, I was standing in the kitchen of a smaller apartment that felt bigger than our house ever had, making coffee for one, and feeling something I hadn't expected: peace. Mutual friends who ran into me started admitting Lauren had told everyone we'd grown apart gradually, that nobody had known about Frank. Learning that even her closest colleagues had been deceived told me something important. It had never been about my failures. It had been about her capacity for it. I started dating again, a widow from church named Margaret, who liked quiet dinners and real conversation, and found my contentment with simple things charming instead of limiting. The difference, I realized, was never in what I had to offer. It was in who was receiving it. One evening in spring, my phone rang. "Lauren." "I wanted to apologize," she said, "for how everything happened." I let her talk. I convinced myself the marriage was already over, that I was just being honest. But the truth is I ended it long before I admitted it, when I decided you weren't enough, instead of trying to build something better with you. She told me she and Frank had lasted 6 weeks in Denver before it fell apart. Turns out, it was more about the thrill of the secret than actually wanting to live it. "I'm sorry to hear that," I told her, and meant it. "Are you?" "Yes. I'm sorry you threw away 28 years for something that wasn't real." There was a long silence before she said, quietly, "Even now, I'm still making this about me." "Yes," I said, "you are. I hope you're happy, Gerald." "I am. Her name is Margaret. She's honest, and kind, and incapable of the kind of manipulation you built our ending on." "Good," she said. "You deserve that." After we hung up, I sat on my balcony and watched the sun finish setting over a life that finally belonged entirely to me. A year earlier, I'd been a man calmly handing his wife's coffee to the stranger she was actually married to, with no idea my whole world was about to come apart in a marble lobby. Now I understood something I don't think I ever would have learned any other way. Contentment was never my weakness. It was the thing worth protecting from anyone who mistook it for one. Lauren was right about exactly one thing, in the end. We both deserved someone who truly understood us. She deserved someone capable of exactly the kind of deception she'd built her second life on, and I deserved someone whose love came without an exit strategy. For the first time in years, I was exactly where I belonged.